Hello, it's Melissa from Melissa's Creations. Today I'm going to show you how to make this Matchbox slider goodie box. This has Hershey Kisses in it, and it features the Jar of Love stamp set and the framelits. We're going to stamp a little sentiment on the front of our window sheet here. You fill me with happiness, because of course Hershey Kisses equals happiness. And I also have a DSP liner down here in the bottom of the box, just to add a little bit of extra fun. So let's go ahead and go over the measurements of everything and the supplies we used. We're starting with StazOn. This is the Jet Black StazOn to stamp onto our window sheet. Our other inks we're using today are Flirty Flamingo and Peekaboo Peach. Both of these are from the 1618 in colors. We're also using Pear Pizzazz. This is from the Subtles collection. You will need some scrap white so that we can stamp and cut out our flowers for the front of our box. We are using a 8.5 by 11 sheet of Flirty Flamingo from the new in colors. The stamp set we're using today is Jar of Love. This is a photopolymer set and it is so versatile. This is an amazing set. We're also using the Everyday Jars framelits dies so that we can cut out our flowers and embellishments for the front of our box. The acrylic blocks I'm using today are D, C, and B, a couple of different sizes. And we're also using the window sheets. These come in a pack of two 12 by 12 sheets for $5. They are amazing. There's a lot of different uses for these. We're going to go ahead and start with our box today. The first thing I want to do is cut my sheet. I'll bring in my Stampin' trimmer. And the first dimension we need to cut is for the box base. So we want to cut with the 8.5 inch at the top. We're going to cut at 5. And trim that down to 5.5. I'm going to set this piece aside. We're using this piece for the Matchbox part of our box. That's the inside where our chocolates will be stored. On this, you should have 3.5 inches left over, so we want to trim that down to 10.5. So since this is an 11 inch wide sheet of paper, I'm just going to trim off a 1/2 inch, and that should give us 10.5 inch length. Setting the cutter aside, we will bring in our score pal and start scoring our box. We want the 5-inch measurement first, and we are going to score it at 1 and 4. Rotate, and now we will score at 1 and 4.5. Essentially, we just made one score line at 1 inch on each dimension on each side of the box. Bring in your wrap, and with the long side up at the top, you're going to score at 2 3/8. So the 1/8 inch marks are pretty easy. Here's my 2, 1, 2, 3. So 2 3/8, 3.5, 6 5/8. So if this is my 1/2 inch, it's 1/8 of an inch past that, so 6 5/8. And finally 7 3/4. So essentially, these two pieces here are an 1 inch plus 1/8 of an inch, just to easily wrap around our box. Before we fold and score and glue our box together, let's bring in the decorative label punch. And in the center score, so we have a rectangle, our 1 1/8 inch score line here. We have a square, 1 1/8 inch score line here, and another rectangle. So in the middle, slide your punch in as far as it will go. Center it between those two score lines and punch. Now we'll bring in some window sheet. This measures 2 inches wide, and we need to cut a piece off that will measure the length of the middle of our box, just slightly under. So the middle of the box is 3 1/8. So I'll cut this piece down to 3 so that it measures 2 by 3. And that will fit nicely right inside on the underside of our box. We'll take some fast fuse and lightly run a bit around the corners and the side of that window sheet, and then glue it in place. Try to be a little careful that you don't get too much adhesive on this side, on the correct side of your box, but if you do, no worries, because we're going to be putting our embellishments around that frame. So we will take our bone folder and crease those score lines. And be careful that your work surface isn't too sticky from that fast fuse. Using a silicone sheet would help quite a bit to keep your workspace clean. One side of your box is a little longer than the other of your wrap. So as soon as we get the inside of our box assembled, we can figure out which way we want that to go. So getting the box piece, that's the 5 by 5.5 inch piece, crease all of your score lines. And cut up on this and this side, rotate it, and then cut up again. Now we'll take some more fast fuse and put that on the right side of the flaps of your box. And assemble. If you have little bits sticking up, that's okay. We can trim it. I'm just matching the corners here. So we'll come over, and I have a little bit excess here, so we'll just take our snips and snip that right off. Tiny, tiny bit over here, so we'll just trim that off as well. Now we can assemble the pocket with the window on the top. Wrap around your box. And I like to assemble it so that I have a narrow strip over here. If we did it this way, it would be a little bit larger. It doesn't matter either way, but since I want the smaller strip, I'm going to put adhesive on the wrong side of my box here. Line everything up and glue it down. So there is the base of our box. Now we're ready to start embellishing. Bring in my scrap pieces of Whisper White. The stamps we're going to use today are these 2 lovely flower bits here, as well as these 2 that are connected. We're also going to use this filler accent, as well as this tiny little fern. I'm going to start with my flowers. Let's bring in our C block here. We're going to stamp two of these in Peekaboo Peach. And we're done with the peach. So we'll clean off that block. We'll grab our accent, and actually I'll use the B block for that. Don't want it too big. If your block is too big, it has a tendency to get ink on it when you ink up your stamp. So we'll use this guy and layer him right over the Peekaboo Peach. Just like that. Clean off that stamp. We'll grab the solid image of the two flowers. We're going to do the stamp off technique because I want the bottom darker. I want the bottom lighter than the top color. So stamp off and stamp light. And we'll do two of these. Clean off that stamp. And we'll get the accent for the double flowers. And we're going to do this in full ink. So line it up over the top and stamp that. Clean that. We'll do our little guy. This is the little fern. So I'm going to put away my Flirty Flamingo, bring in my Pear Pizzazz, and we'll stamp a few of these in the excess space. We want about 3 or 4. Let's see if I can get one here, and might be able to get one here as well. All right, now we will stamp. You could also use the stamp off technique depending on how light or dark you wanted that stamp on your project. We'll bring in our D block and pick up our stem. Now we don't need the whole thing. We mostly just want this filler part here. I don't need the entire stem, although I could cut it off if I didn't want to use it. So I'm just inking up a portion of it. I'm not really getting all of the stem down here. And we'll just put a couple of those on some scrap. And you want about 3. Like so. And my green accent pieces. We do want to add some of the little stamens to these. So in here we have this tiny, tiny little stamen stamp. So we'll take our small block and we'll take some smoky slate, ink that tiny flower stamens up, and just stamp the accent right on top. This is where we want to stamp our sentiment onto our window sheet. Now I did this after I assembled because I wanted to make sure I had correct placement on my window sheet. So I'll take the sentiment from Jar of Love, and we are using You Fill Me With Happiness. Now the StazOn tends to really stick down to that window sheet. So you want to be gentle. So I'll find my placement. stamp it down, release from the block so that it can kind of relieve some of that pressure, and very gently pull it back up. And now we have our sentiment, "You fill me with happiness." So cute. Now I can start assembling my box pieces to the top. I like to use the liquid glue for this. It gives me a little bit of wiggle room with my placement. I'm going to trim off the excess of our stamped fillers, and I'm going to place those first. I'm actually going to put the slider part in so that I can keep that pretty stable. Just going to put a little bit of the liquid glue on the bottom of my stem. We'll start with one here. A little bit more glue. You can get creative with this, just place them however you'd like. This one's going to come out a little bit farther towards the top. We have a finished Matchbox slider that we can start filling with chocolates or other goodies. And there it is. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to see more from me, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you'd like to visit my blog, you can do so at melissascreations.com. You can also shop online at my store, melissascreations.stampinup.net. There's a hostess code right on the front. Copy that, click on Shop Now, paste it into your shopping bag, and you'll receive a thank you from me next month. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this project. Share yours with me when you get yours done. Thank you so much.